To lead this next group, I'm actually not going to introduce, I'm going to have the man himself introduce everybody, if that's okay. But we're really excited to have a very unique conversation where we're going to showcase the past, present and future of the Centre for Real Estate. And who better to lead that conversation than another stalwart of the Centre, but our one and only Todd McGrath. So please welcome Todd.
Doesn't that make you feel young? All tattered and, huh? Doesn't that make us feel young? That's what it was 40 years ago. All right. Before I forget, I just want to say how proud I am of all of the alums who presented today. An awesome job. But what we want to do for the next hour or so is talk about the institution we love, Center for Real Estate, right? And so what I want to do is introduce our founding leaders of the center. And actually, I'm going to have them introduce themselves so I don't blabber on. And maybe just, who are you? What did you do here? Give us a little history, because there are people in the room who have heard about you, haven't met you. Sure, Lynn.
Lynn Segallen. I was a PhD student here at DUSP, and as part of my education, I was a TA for a guy by the name of Phil David, and that was my introduction to real estate. I taught with him real estate finance and municipal finance, and then when the real estate program was started, I was tapped to teach the real estate finance course. I had been teaching that course. I graduated in '80, and then 2 weeks later, I was on the faculty. It was a little abrupt, but it was fabulous. And so I'd been teaching a real estate finance course. And the interesting thing about teaching real estate finance at DUSP in 1981 was that I was told that nobody would take the course, because after all, it was about the other side. And I had the largest enrollment of any DUS course that year. So it was clearly a really pent-up demand. And it was an important demand to learn about, if you're in a planner, and whichever side of the table you're on as a planner, you really need to understand how real estate operates. So I taught real estate finance, and they started the real estate program, and I was a junior faculty member at that point, teaching. I taught until about 1990, and then I got an invitation to go to Columbia Business School and build their real estate program, which I did, using many of the ideas that had formulated here at MIT in the real estate program. I taught and I did research and write books while I was there, but it was an incredible platform to have. And so I was asked to serve on a number of corporate boards. And so I evolved a career of teaching, research, and writing, and serving on corporate boards. And I think the benefit of that kind of integration of theory and practice, which was fundamental to the program I built, was so incredibly helpful to the students. I had credibility. I mean, she knows how the real world acts and how they make decisions. But it was, that was the ethos here at MIT, that you had to understand theory and practice, and you had to apply practice to problem solving. And so a lot of what I've done, I feel I owe to my time as both a graduate student and as faculty member here at MIT.
So I'm Larry Backow, and in 1982, my department chair, who's sitting right over here, Gary Hack, asked if I could come see him, and he told me that he had a job for me, and that is he wanted me to work with an MIT alumnus who I had never heard of, named Hank Spaulding, to figure out what MIT should be doing in the area of real estate. And Hank at the time, as he explained to me, thought that we should have an undergraduate major in real estate. I knew nothing about real estate, so it's unclear to me why Gary asked me to actually do this job. But it was one of those meetings that when you look back on your life, it really changed mine. I had actually decided that I was leaving MIT at the time. I'd written a book with a colleague, which these guys know, Mike O'Hare. And Mike had not gotten tenure. And I thought that was not the right decision. And I said, if he's not going to get tenure, neither am I. So it's time for me to go figure out something else to do. And it turned out that something else to do was to work with Hank. And we went about it in sort of an interesting way. Hank said, I told him, I don't know anything about real estate. He said, well, come on, you'll learn. And we proceeded to spend a fair amount of time with a bunch of Hank's friends. And these were at the time, the titans of the real estate industry. Jerry Hines, Dan Rose, Jerry Blakely, others here in Boston, Mort Zuckerman, Ed Lindy. Anyway, and in each, I had a lot of great lunches. And each one of these conversations, sort of, Hank would turn to me and say, okay, Larry, go ahead and ask some questions. And so I would sort of say, who do you hire? What do you look for? Who succeeds? Who fails? What do people learn on the job? If you could send your best people back to school for 3 or 4 months, what would you want them to study? What are the skills that are needed so that can't be taught? You sort of have to screen for when you admit people. And out of that emerged sort of an idea for a real estate program. And the big insight, there were 2 big insights at the time. One was that this was not an undergraduate degree because most people did not graduate from high school thinking that this is what they wanted to do with their lives. They came to this decision after they had done something else. And then we realized that people had a high opportunity cost if they were going to do it, that they have to take time off from what they were doing at the moment and go back to school. And the alternative for many of them would be to go get a business degree, which was a 2-year commitment. So we decided that it made sense to try and structure something as a program that could be completed in 12 months, and hence the real estate program. Professor Wheat.
So I was at MIT for 13 years before any of this happened. I was squirreled away over in the economics department. I was the economics department urban economist, writing and publishing and so on. And I had some connections with Lloyd Rodwin over in the planning department. But I was pretty much over in economics. And then one day Larry came and said, could you teach a course in sort of economics for real estate students? And I thought about it and I said, sure. I'm going to take all the theory that I've been working on for years and I'm going to cram it down their throat. And I am not going to have one of those wishy-washy case study courses. And they're going to stagger out of my course saying, what was that all about? And then I did that for 12 years, and then I wrote a textbook to try and make it a little easier. And it's interesting. People think that I didn't have any application or applied size, but exactly the same year that the center was formed, an old friend of mine who was on the economics department at UMass Boston, Ray Torto, got together with me and said, let's form a company to do forecasting. People just are making mistakes all the time in real estate, and they really should be able to do simple forecasting. And we did that, and we ran that, and that went parallel for 35 years that I was teaching here. And it was perfectly intertwined. There were things I did out there that I could use in the classroom and things I could use in the classroom to improve the forecast. So it was serendipity.
So I came to real estate sort of Out of a career in architecture and city planning. I had degrees in both of those fields, and I worked for a number of years for Victor Gruen in New York. And it was a very interesting experience because half of our office designed shopping centers that were drawing people out of the downtowns of their cities. And the other half, I was in the urban design program, picked up where they left off and tried to revive the downtowns of the cities on it. And what I learned from that was, you know, a little bit about the economics of retailing and other kinds of things. But what I also learned was that I didn't know very much about real estate or development or finance. And so I came to MIT and to get a PhD. And when I arrived here, the PhD students in the year ahead of me all said, you know, what you got to do is you got to go down to the business school, Harvard Business School, and take Phil David's course in real estate development. You'll learn more there, they said, than you'll learn anywhere in any classes here in DUS. And so I did it, and it was true. I mean, I learned a lot about that, and it would stick with me as we went along. In fact, when Phil David decided to leave the Harvard Business School, I went to Lloyd Rodwin and told him, you better hire him here because he's really good, and he did. And we had our first real estate course here. But in any case, I got really interested in development when I took a few years off from I began teaching after I finished my examinations for my PhD, and I worked at my PhD dissertation over the years. But what happened to me was I went up to Canada to work for the Canadian government doing affordable housing, actually building it, and also doing public-private developments and other kinds of big projects. And what I discovered about it was all of the people that we had who had economics background knew a lot about economics and nothing about planning or design. And that people on the other side who were planners or architects knew how to design beautiful environments, but nothing about the economics of these things. And so when I came back to teach here, I thought, you know, we really need a program that brings those kinds of things together where people can understand that these are all part of a whole project experience on it. And with sheer luck, Hank Spaulding came along and offered to help us do this. And I looked around and I said, who's the smartest young faculty member we have? And that's Bacow. And I asked him if he'd work with him to do it. And that's how our program got started. And what I would say about it, it's an incredible for me, and I think probably the others of us who were there at the start, it's an incredible experience to see a program that's lasted 40 years in the academic world. Not most of them don't last 40 years. In fact, the reason that they're so transient is why so many deans and so many presidents of universities like to build buildings. You know, because they're worried that's the only thing that's going to last for a few years. On this, but in any case, it's been a really wonderful thing to hear the excitement of this program today and the things that all of you have done.
All right, so we've gotten to 40 years, and I guess that's it, folks. Any questions? Just kidding. All right, so we gave you a little, it wasn't a midterm that was put on your chair. It was the original memo that Gary and Larry wrote to get the program approved at MIT. And so take a look at that. There's a lot of good kind of thought in terms of what the center, what the faculty were trying to do and why. But who were we really creating the center for? What was the driver? Who was the beneficiary? Who were the beneficiaries? Why were we doing this?
Well, I think Larry was very persuasive after he did that analysis with Hank on it. What we saw was that a lot of people had backgrounds in some field that was related to real estate development, but didn't really have a very good synopsis of what it's about and didn't have the really essential keys. The students who were coming here to MIT study architecture knew nothing about economics or real estate or all the rest of that, people who were out there and who had gotten degrees in business or other kinds of things, knew nothing about the design. And so we thought we would tap a market of people who've been working for a few years and who really wanted to get into real depth of understanding of what real estate was about. So that was one group. The other group was, I was really interested in having courses that students who were studying architecture at MIT or study city planning at MIT or studying civil engineering at MIT could actually take, so that they rounded out their educations there. And so it was a mixture of students coming for other purposes and also students out there who were looking for a concentrated program that would tell them about development. Larry, you may have other views on
Oh,
it.
let me echo what Gary said. I think all of us sat there with enormous pride listening to all of you, the graduates, and all the things that you've done that have gone well beyond, I think, what even we could have imagined, when you were sitting in our classrooms. For faculty, our relationship to our students is in some ways like that of parent to child, in the sense that, your children grow up and they leave the house and they get married and they have kids of their own. They're always your kids. But in many respects, you're always our students. And so we take great pride in what you've done. And I think you've all made us extremely proud. What's interesting to me to look back on where we are now with with this program is it seems like, of course, this was going to succeed. It was far from clear at the very beginning. I mean, we started this program, when we started talking about it, there was open hostility from some groups at MIT. The Sloan School wanted nothing to do with us. In fact, at the time when we looked around to see what other schools were doing in the area of real estate, Sloan was literally, I think, the only major business school that did not have a single course in real estate. And they were quite happy that was the case. What was interesting is in year 2 of this program, once it had been given, I think it was US News and World Report used to rank different business schools and then rank them by where they stood in the individual fields. And at that point, they ranked Sloan as having the second best real estate program of any business school in the country. So there was sort of a moral victory on our part. They started to pay a little bit of attention to us at the time. But we sort of take it for granted now, but it was very, there was great skepticism. And I also have to say, it's with great pride that, Lynn went off and helped to establish this program at Columbia, and Jacques is now running the program at
And there was Carrie Vandell who did it in Wisconsin first, and then in California forget which school. But it was amazing. At the 5 top schools of real estate, you had 3 people who were all educated at MIT in Dustman. And it was astounding. We all sort of had the same mindset. I have something to add if you're finished.
Go ahead.
And I remember talking to Hank Spaulding. And, in the early 80s, real estate wasn't looked upon as a profession. It was looked at as kind of trade schooly like. And Hank really wanted to professionalize. He wanted to be a leader in professionalizing the study of real estate because it was a serious, high-risk endeavor if you were in development. And I think that has happened. We take a lot now for granted because we have, in the course of other programs developing and MIT taking the lead, it has been professionalized. I think of all the talks today of the alumni who talked about their projects. You would not have had that 40 years ago. So it's really a testimony to that kind of vision of professionalizing what is a very serious business.
Also, I'll just add one other thing, and that is, at the time that we created the program, it was important that we create not just a master's degree in real estate development. It was also important that we create a research program in the field. And it was, in fact, David Geltner, who David somewhere out there. There he is. There's David. David was a PhD student, and your PhD was the first dissertation that we supported at the Center for Real Estate. But it was, and I think the fact that, you know, Bill really put the stake down and started doing not just urban economics, but I think the existence of the center influenced your research agenda over time. Yes?
Oh, for sure. I think the other thing is in today's business school environment, if you talk to students, you know, what's the most exciting field? What's something that everybody wants to do? It's one word, entrepreneurship. And what students think now entrepreneurship is starting up internet companies. But in fact, for, you know, decades and maybe even centuries, one of the easiest or most common entrepreneurship endeavors that businessmen would go into is real estate. And it required that, you know, a little bit about a lot of things, as opposed to a lot about a few things, that you be able to, you know, merge together engineering and design and law and economics and finance and become an entrepreneur. And I think that's where we really thought the program should go, not just be a program in finance or a program in accounting or so on, but it should train entrepreneurs. You'll see maybe later tonight, but it's actually a big renewed interest over at Sloan these days in entrepreneurship. And you ask them, well, what does that mean? Aside from starting up an internet company, the next most important thing is real estate.
By the way, I can't tell you how wonderful it was when Chris put up his slide about research. And you took a look at the various research activities. And this is a faculty member at the Sloan School who was doing it, and really underscored the connections, going back to what Gary said earlier, that real estate has to so many different aspects of life as we know it, literally on the planet. So,
All right, so this is all the stuff that people needed to know 40 years ago. Any of that look familiar? All right. General thoughts? Was it fun putting the curriculum together? Was it hard?
So my recollection of this process is that after Hank and I had a series of these lunches, really good lunches, we sort of blocked out things and then started, we all started meeting together, I think, and sort of saying, okay, what does this imply in terms of a curriculum? And we labeled some classes. And in fact, if you take a look at the proposal that went to the MIT faculty, this is the entire institute faculty, it basically laid out what you see here today. And then over time, it just kept getting tweaked a bit.
But I want to add one thing, one innovation that I think was really important, and that is that we all decided that what we would do in all of our classes is have a pair of instructors, not just one person. And what we would have is somebody who's a practitioner and somebody who is an academic in those classes. And so that actually made a difference. In fact, Larry, I think, brought in to his class
John Hamilton.
the top real estate lawyer in the city, and did that. Lynn had several people that she worked with on it. I don't remember who you had, Bill.
Yeah, but I had Tom Steele.
Yeah.
And
Bill's never had anyone for the record.
I think Bill had his partner who had more experience in the field, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it was because, I think because this is a future question that was on Todd's list here, because real estate data was still in its innocence at that time, just getting started. It was really a very nascent business, and you couldn't invite people to come in. You could invite people to come in and look at the economics of projects. But if you tried to look at the economics of markets, It was a lot more complicated.
I actually have to, I can't help myself. I have to tell two stories about the early years. If you take a look at the date of the faculty meeting, it was the last faculty meeting in the fall semester, which was the December faculty meeting, which we always had a difficult time getting a quorum for, which was sort of good because we could pack the house to get the thing approved. But we had this problem, and the problem was that we were looking to admit a class that would start in the fall of 84. And the faculty meeting was in December of 83. And we had to get applications out. And so the applications, we had to have them in by February 15th. So we had this dilemma. Do we send out applications for a program that does not yet exist? So I remember going to the dean of the graduate school, Frank Perkins at the time, and I said, Frank, what do I do? Now remember, I'm a junior faculty member, so I'm treading lightly on all this stuff. And Frank looked at me and he said, Al, MIT operates under the watchword of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Just go do it. So we sent out, we announced that the program existed, even though it didn't.
So even brilliant scholars wing it.
Yeah.
Right?
But wait, it gets better. So its deadline for applications was February 15th. On February 14th, we had 12 applications. 12 applications, right? On February 15th, we had over 200. And I think we wound up with the first year of the program. This is why the class of 85 should be so proud. The program was the most competitive program to get into in all of MIT. I think we accepted about 1 in 10 applications.
Wow.
And one more data point. We wanted a class of 25. We had no idea what our yield would be. So we admitted a class of 35. And 34 people came.
They all came.
Or 35.
They all came.
That's how we wound up with a class for many years. It was just 35.
What was the vision for the role of industry at the center?
So Hank had this idea that we would go to industry and we would look for their support. And it was modeled after something called the Industrial Liaison Program at MIT, where companies would pay to be affiliated with MIT, and they would be invited to meet with faculty and gain access, privileged access to, institute resources of various sorts. And so we created this membership program where we were going to charge members $10,000 a year, which was a lot of money 40 years ago. To become members of the center. Now
They were all Hank's friends.
they were all
There's that
Hank's friends.
Same little crowd of
Right.
Boston Northeast
Right.
developers.
But Hank, you'll appreciate that I'm saying this now. Hank always said that the members were bridge financing for the center, and that the permanent financing would come when our alumni did really, really well, and then would endow the place. So he did say that.
I think the role of the industry is dual role, which is when we had paired teaching, you had industry in the classroom delivering their experiences within a framework of either strategy or finance or transactions. And it wasn't, they weren't war stories. This was structured experience telling and lessons learned. And I think it was invaluable to have industry in the classroom. And that was something I took away and really built on. And I felt that it was really important to have industry-based case studies, because the lessons learned and the experiences of how to solve tough problems was essential. So it was a dual role. They were important for the membership, but they were also critical, in my class at least, for industry learning.
And in those early years, many of our students did their theses in often embedded or using as the membership and industry as
Yes.
resources for data and things like that.
Yes.
I think they still do.
And I think those case studies really contribute to institutional learning over time, right? Remember, and Lynn, I know you've done a lot of those at Columbia, and every time these case studies are taught year after year, right, you've got that learning that goes on from class to class to class to class. So I think there's great value in a really good case study.
I can't help, I'm allowed a story or two. And, when you do case studies, and I got tired of using Harvard case studies because I had my own ideas about what a case study should be. I wanted the students to actually see the documents, not a synopsis of them. But I would use Harvard case studies because some were just so invaluable. One of them was the Gray Bar building. Gray Bar building was a transaction that Larry Wien concocted in a way. It was a real business strategy in the early 1950s. And here it was, 1984. And I taught this case for like 20 years. And my students would say, why are you teaching Gray Bar when the rent income is $4.53? And we were sort of at, like 10 times that, because there was incredible learning value from the kind of structured financing on the equity side of in this transaction. And it was really ingenious. It was Larry Wien sort of expanding on Bill Zeckendorf's, Hawaiian technique. So that these case studies, even when they're old, had incredible learning value, because not everything changes with time. And there were some really, as Todd said, long-lasting lessons.
And how about, you mentioned the role of alumni, maybe being at the end of that bridge. Did we think any more about how alums might be engaged in the curriculum or the program or the center back then? Or was it just starting out, we didn't really give that a lot of thought?
So we had alums of MIT who were engaged from the very beginning. People like Norman Leventhal, Ed Lindy, Hank Spaulding. We had a bunch of MIT alums who were already very prominent in the real estate industry. And but we had to wait until we had alums who had been out in the world and had experience, and then who would then come back, and we'd have people back in our own classrooms. So that happened certainly over time and continues to happen. Witness all the people who got up and talked about their own leadership journeys, the last excellent panel, and various panels that have occurred earlier in the day on individual projects.
It strikes me, and Larry and I were sitting together, and after hearing a number of the presentations of people who are alums here, I thought to myself, why this should be done more often. I mean, these are incredible projects that you people have been working on.
Could you say that again?
Well, I said that that's one way that as you move forward, you might want to do, is to have an annual session of alums coming back and talking about the projects they're working on it. The other part of it that I think is interesting is a different kind of experience, is that there are a lot of people around MIT now who are working on stuff that's going to have impacts in the real estate world, especially IT stuff, and especially someone mentioned, Bill mentioned that he'd worked with the folks from the Sensible Cities Lab. I mean, they're doing projects there that are just incredible, and I guess there are courses that some of our students here take there. But that's stuff that should be going out to alums as well. So it may be that it's possible to organize, energetic sessions like we had today more frequently than 40 years.
I mean, and you don't have to always do it in person because of Zoom. I mean, I know of another program where there are monthly or quarterly meetings among alumni in real estate that keep them connected. And there's an agenda. Somebody might talk about a project, somebody might give a market update, but that kind of connection and continual communication just binds everybody together more often.
That's a great idea. All right, Gary, you were here at MIT and then you went off to UPenn and you did great things. Lynn, you were here at MIT and then you went off to Columbia and you built the best real estate MBA program, if not in the country, on the East Coast. All right, and I understand that you two are pretty close. All right.
Oh, we're kind of far apart.
All right, so if you were the first couple to ever get together and start a graduate real estate program, what would be some of the most important things that you would want to see happen at that program? Right? What would you focus on? What would you want to try to implement based on all of your years of teaching and leading your respective organizations?
Well, I think, if you conceptualize, just visualize a Venn diagram, kind of like the one that Chris presented earlier this morning. One of the allures of real estate, at least for me, and I think Gary shares this view, is the overlapping fields of design, finance, law, economics, and it's that integration of fields in service of problem solving and in creating, in the development world, creating projects that have lasting value and that add to a neighborhood or a downtown or a city. And I think when you think about designing a new program, it's, the one fundamental is bringing theory and practice together, but another is interdisciplinary thinking and problem solving toward an end, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be large-scale development. But what you want to teach is the integration of theory and practice, critical thinking, and how to develop, really solid problem-solving skills. I'll let you finish.
I'm not sure what my answer is to that. It's I think if we were doing it today, we have things at our disposal that we never had before. Nobody. Bill or someone was talking about the use of the primitive computers that we had when we started this program. Well, now, I mean, the capacity to be able to do Zooming and the capacity to use sophisticated programs that augment the kind of techniques that we use to find solutions to problems. All of these kinds of things mean that you can do a lot more in a digital world, and so I think if I were doing it over today, I guess I would want to ask the question of how much do we have to do in person, and how much do we have to do, and how much can we do on the internet with people, and it may actually make it possible to reduce the amount of time away from the jobs that people have, and have them doing some of the work before they come to MIT, and perhaps spend only a semester or a semester in a summer or some such things, and lower the cost to people of being able to do this. That also raises a whole other kind of question. Much of my work in the last few years has been in the last 10 or 15 years since I retired from Penn, has been teaching in Asia and teaching in other parts of the world, and people are begging for this kind of knowledge in other parts of the world, which are now moving on into a, a more capitalist formula for doing very large projects in those countries. And so how to tap that market of people or help them in being able to acquire these things might be on my mind today too.
Yeah, it's a very powerful idea. It's very interesting.
Okay, I would add
Go ahead,
one
Lynn.
more thing. It really piggybacks on what Gary's saying. I think in today's world, that complexity of problem solving demands a kind of public-private approach. And this was never part, I don't recall part of the curriculum. I mean, I developed a lot of work afterwards, but I think there is no single solution that only the private sector can do and no single solution that only the public sector can do. I think you really, in today's world, especially globally, you have to think public-private. The US doesn't do as much public-private, even though there's a history of it, as Asia does. And so I think that's a really important component of a global program today.
Interesting. Larry, your level of external engagement has been just unparalleled. When you were here as a faculty member, when you were our chancellor, and then you became the president of Tufts and then the president of Harvard, you have engaged with constituencies that we can't even imagine. But thinking back on all of the time you've spent engaging with constituencies and industry, any thoughts for our program? Anything you've learned that might be helpful to us in terms of strategies for engagement, or because, it could be engaging students, as you point out, Gary, before they come here, engaging them, educating them. Is there do you have any thoughts on your vast experience with this?
Oh, it's a good question. I'll say maybe it's not on engagement so much as the importance of universities to the real estate profession and the real estate industry. Pat Moynihan was a longtime faculty member at Harvard in the government department before he became ambassador to India and then a United States senator from New York. And he studied urban politics, things. And he said at one point that if you want to build a great city, first build a great university and wait 100 years. And at a time in which people are questioning the value of great universities, research universities, I think everybody in this room who has an interest in economic development, who has an interest in seeing that this economy continue to grow, you all have an interest in seeing that these institutions continue to flourish. And I'm not just talking about MIT as much as I love this institution, or Harvard or Tufts or any of the other places that I've been affiliated with. But it's difficult if you look throughout the world. Gary, you probably had more experience than any of us at this. If you look throughout the world, it's difficult to identify any place in the world where there's a first-rate research university where the area around it is not flourishing economically relative to the broader sort of region. Bill, you can attest to that as well. And so I say this at a time because we are questioning in this country right now the value of all of these institutions. People are raising questions about whether or not we are over educating students who come from abroad, whether or not we are too welcoming of foreign scholars. I happen to have a point of view on that, and you can probably imagine what it is. But I just want to use this opportunity when you're talking about other constituencies to say that you have a vested interest in the health of these institutions. When Ollie and Wayne were talking up here earlier about investing in Texas. Much of what makes Texas, UT, Austin, the place that it is, because of the value of that university. So
They stole our faculty. They had a business model that was very, very Southern until who was the big IT guy in Texas? Gave them, yes,
Yeah, Michael Dell.
gave them huge amounts of money and said, if you want to economically develop Texas, if you want UT to generate ideas that'll spread throughout the economy, you have to spend money. You have to get faculty. You have to build up your infrastructure. So that's going to require a higher overhead rate. You have to do all the things that Harvard does or MIT does. And if you're willing to do that and willing to do that year after year after year, you can turn a university into a world-class institution that'll have spillovers throughout the economy. And I think UT's transformed itself.
So one last thought on this, and I'm sorry to go on.
It wasn't cheap.
We live in a world at the moment in which the only truly scarce capital is human capital. Financial capital moves at the speed of light. It's no longer necessary to be well endowed in natural resources to be a wealthy nation. Just take a look at Singapore, take a look at Israel is another good example, the Netherlands. It's the ability to, the only truly form of scarce capital is human capital. And it's the ability to attract and aggregate and concentrate and develop human capital, which to a large extent determines the wealth of regions, cities, nations. United States has traditionally been the sink at the end of the rest of the world's brain drain. And, you know, we diminish ourselves if we sort of begin to erect barriers and say that, no, we don't want all these foreign students. We don't want foreign scholars. And just look at the people sitting in this room. Many of you have come from elsewhere to this country. Last time I checked, MIT's faculty was a third from abroad. Same down the street there's another university. I can't remember the name of it down the river. But anyway, I'm sorry to get on my soapbox, but at the moment, this is something I spent a lot of time thinking
But
about.
I think it's true that globally, there are many universities, private and public, that do a comparable job of teaching as the best American universities. But the research university is a particularly American invention, shall we call it?
It was actually a German invention, which Johns Hopkins borrowed.
And
then
where you have
instituted
faculty,
here.
you know, teaching half the time and the other half the time running research projects that are funded. And that is a very big difference between the US university system and the university system in a lot of other countries.
The fact that the best universities in the world were in Germany in the 1930s, and none of them are in the top right now. We cannot take sort of the preeminence of American research universities for granted. Others are nipping at our heels.
Okay, excellent. Another piece of wisdom for Bill, or at least I'll attribute it to Bill. So market cycle, right? We've seen that over the last 40 years. And our real estate curriculum has changed a lot over the last 40 years, right? Well, how about this? Why don't we have Sichi, Walt, Albert, and David come on up on stage, right? And let's talk a little bit about what's the same, what's different, and particularly what's different and why. Come on up. All right, so I look at this, and I look at the left, and I look at the right, and I think I would do icons who were originally laying out the curriculum. You did a pretty good job. We're teaching a lot of the same stuff, you know, in different ways, but the same content is still relevant 40 years later. We do have some, if you look on the right, we've got a couple new courses. And I've got Sichi up there. And we have a new course, Sustainable Real Estate. And Sichi, do you want to just spend a minute and for some of the older alums, just give them a sense of why that is now a core course and how you're approaching that?
Thank you so much. So I learned so much from our first generation of the founders of the Center for Real Estate. Before I talk about my course, I just want to also tell a very small story of how I got to know the CRE. Before I came to MIT, I was a professor in China. I got to know center not from the teaching or the master's program, but mainly from research. Because all the professors here, the center, they are the founders of our field, real estate finance, real estate economics, and urban economics. I got a chance to come to Harvard, GSD for 1 year postdoc after I got my PhD from Tsinghua. And then at that time, I had no idea, and I couldn't find very good real estate classes there. And then I followed some of the students from the GSD and came to MIT CRE to audit David's class and Bill's class. And then I got into this field of urban economics. So then I got to the center, also had very, very vibrant master's program. After I came here, I was thinking how I can contribute to this curriculum. That's why I created this class like 5 years ago, still very new. Some of you already took this class. And just because sustainability, it's like real estate and the climate, they are bundled together. Real estate is location-based. Climate risk also location-based. And our sector contribute to 30 to 40% of the carbon. So that's why we feel like we want the student to build some skills and knowledge in that.
Good, excellent. You know what might make sense is, so we've got our founding faculty, we've got our current leadership, and we've got David. How you doing, Dave? Good, okay. So you were a doctoral student when our center was formed, right? And then you took a little hiatus and went somewhere else, and then we got you back. And when you came back in around, what, 2000? 2002, you immediately assumed a leadership role. And you were very involved in leadership. And then you were running the center from 2008 on?
2003 to 2008.
Okay.
I'm sort of by myself. And then
Okay.
and there was a slight crisis known as the global financial crisis, which put the center in an existential crisis. I think we had 14 students in the class of, was it 2010?
That sounds right, yeah.
And so we sort of put together an emergency team to lead the center. So it was an awesome team, about 6 people, I would say. I took the academic directorship and headed up the sort of the curriculum and dealing with the current students. Bill was kind enough to do the stuff I didn't want to do administratively and with the school council and everything, as well as faculty hiring. I think that was the period when we hired our man here.
Yeah.
And then Todd, you were instrumental. You were basically dealing with industry relations, alumni relations, and Dennis Frenchman was playing a lead role through the development side of the curriculum. So during that period, we were also raising the funding for and then managing the renovation of Building 9 and the move across the street from the gym to Building 9. And Peter Roth was really heading up that aspect of the thing. And of course, we had Marion Cunningham and Lisa Toma with the more administrative accounting, side of things. And that team experience, which was from 2009 to 2014, was for me a very positive one. We brought the center up strongly from that nadir there, and it was a sort of an era of good feelings in a sense that everybody was sort of doing what they did best. And, we all got along, and nobody was having to work too hard or with too much stress because there was that many people, doing different things. Contrast that with and I don't know, maybe I'm sort of rambling on.
No,
here,
go ahead. No,
changing the subject or something, but I mean, we all tremendously love this center. We love the idea of this center and this program that these wonderful founding fathers and mothers have done. And we want to think about how to keep it going, how to keep it strong. And it does have some weaknesses that I think are important to think about. And one of them is just how hard it is to run the center when it's one person who's almost primarily responsible for almost everything. If I just contrast my first 5-year stint with my second 5-year stint, first 4-year stint, I was the director, and the center is like a mini department. It has to do all the things that academic departments have to do. It's got to do curriculum, it's got to do marketing and applications and admissions, and it's got to deal with current students, and it's got to deal with alumni, and it's got to deal with industry. It's got to develop and promote research, world-class research. It's got to do career services. It's got to do fundraising, budgeting. I mean, so one person is going to be responsible for all of this. And, it works for an academic department because they're way bigger. And also they have a much more solid funding basis. And so it's really quite a challenging job. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, all of you who are up here who have done it. Bill's sort of the champion. He did it for 10 years, but Bill's very unique. I think that's one thing that we should maybe think about. Can we sort of have more of a team structure, to run the place? But anyway, I'll shut up.
I think it's interesting because, we went through the global financial crisis, and like we went through in the early 90s. Early 90s was a big change. Funding, right? All of our partners, remember, they're all paying 10 grand with a lot of money every year. And then we lost 70% of them or something. So that was really tough. And we had to kind of manage through that. But we've managed through these crises over the last 40 years, right? And, Dave, one of the things that you and I have talked about over the last, 20 years is kind of the advantages and disadvantages. We're a center. And Larry said Sloan had zero interest when we started. And I'm going to come to Sichi next because rumor has it, Sloan's interested in collaborating with us through Sichi and Albert and Walt. But are we in the right place? We're 40 years in, right? Should we be at Sloan? Should we still be in school? We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but any thoughts that you have? And I know, Walt, you were 30 years in business school, and then you came here to School of Architecture and Planning. Lynn, just the opposite. 10 years here, 20 years at Columbia. So I thought maybe some of the alums might be interested in the question. But
I think that's a question we can't answer this evening, but there's a dilemma when you want a program to be interdisciplinary and unique. You have fixed costs of running the program. Departments can spread that fixed cost over large numbers of students and large numbers of faculty. When you're a small program, it's very difficult to do that. And so while intellectually it seems great to have an interdisciplinary program, real estate is a profession in which that sort of thrives. Trying to create logistics, the management issues around having a small program do everything, handle its own admissions, handle its own placement, handle its own budgeting, is a very difficult situation. And I think that's probably why real estate programs decades ago emerged in business schools, because business schools have all these fixed costs. They have an admissions program. They can handle a lot of those administrative functions for the program. We had to handle our own administrative functions.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it very difficult, expensive.
Let me offer a perspective, both from somebody who ran the program for a while, but somebody who has overseen the running of lots of programs in lots of different places. for a while. Programs take on the character and the culture of that part of the university that they are embedded in. One of the distinguishing features of this program, I think relative to lots of others, is that it is more place-based, okay, than you will find with programs that are located in business schools. And so it goes back to something that Gary said early on. It's that, you know, we wanted people who understood something about how buildings were planned, how spaces were made, how people actually lived and worked within them. Now, I actually said something at my Harvard inauguration, and that was that, you know, after art, literature, and music, our buildings are among the most enduring products of our society. I mean, people travel all over the world to see spaces. And so I personally would say, if the question is, should this be an interdisciplinary program that's sort of located where it is right now, or should it migrate, let's say, to Sloan? And yeah, there may be administrative efficiencies to do that. It would be a different program if it lost the connection that it has. I'm looking at Richard, to engineering, to civil engineering, to architecture, to planning, if it's located in a different place. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen. There are great real estate programs that are, you know, part of MBA programs, but it would be different. And I think in many respects, this is our comparative advantage relative to our many of our peers.
I think Larry really hit it on the right target, which is, you know, I had unlimited freedom at Columbia to build this program. And so having come from here, I knew what to use his language, the place-based issues mattered. And I was trained as a planner. And so what I was doing, you know, I was teaching real estate finance, but I wasn't teaching real estate finance the way an economist or a financial economist would teach it. And I was given total latitude to do that. I think after you have a program established for 40 years, and then you become part of a business school, you might lose that distinctiveness as opposed to starting in that place and creating that distinctiveness. And so I would be a little wary. I would do exactly what you're doing, which is encouraging that kind of integration. And I'd go further to say you need it more with engineering as well. But I would be very leery about trying to be subsumed in a business school, which has a much bigger kind of agenda and pedagogy, you know.
All right, let me go to Walt and then David, if he wants to say anything.
Yeah, well, I was just going to point out that in some sense, there's like an organic push from Sloan towards the CRE because, you know, in my class and other classes, a large number of Sloan students are really interested. I mean, you mentioned this earlier in terms of entrepreneurship. They're really interested in commercial real estate. So, and I think the powers that be at Sloan realize this, and there's this inevitable sort of, you know, evolution where we're going to move together. And, you know, and the issue is, you know, are we going to move together? Are we going to design this, or are we just going to allow it to happen? But again, there's this underlying flow of the interest from Sloan as a management school towards, you know, what we're teaching and how we're teaching. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any, I don't think it's any movement to like have us subsumed by Sloan. I don't think anybody wants center to move to Sloan. I think Sichi's been the one, you know, most involved in that. So I think you want to tell what's going on, Sichi?
Yeah, maybe I can, on behalf of our committee, we do have a committee from last year, and Albert and Walter, they are on the committee. We call it a joint committee, joint faculty committee on the real estate education and research at MIT. So, and we also have two professors from Sloan School, mainly they two are from the finance group in the Sloan School. So they are Professor Chris Palmer. This morning you already heard his presentation. He really devoted so much time in real estate research. He has a passion. And also Professor Antoinette Schur, who is a very senior finance professor, the former head of that department. So five of us, we also have Bill as our advisor and all the faculty, and to discuss how we can better integrate. So bottom line is we are not going to move to the Sloan School. It won't happen. And the center will always be here, based here. But we want to have like a joint real estate initiative. So that's basically the research and also joint classes. And maybe later we have a new opportunity for a joint dual degree or joint real estate degree with MBA or Master of Finance. So this won't be fast because last 40 years that haven't happened yet and won't like tomorrow. But I think we have a 5-year plan on mind. The 5-year plan will be like first 1 or 2 years, baby steps. Now we just created a new class in the past semester called Action Learning. Some of our students took that class. So that's basically real estate action learning. We have 20 students, half from us, half from MBA. We have 5 companies. I just want to mention these 5 companies really sent to all the alumni. And because we have the teams, small teams, 5 small teams, student teams work with 5 companies as client. And we have Prologis, Hamid, Strong Support, JLL. And then we have the other 3 companies all they are funded by our MS30 alumni. Car Properties, Oliva is here, and Taurus Investment Holdings, Peter Marigan, and also the Davis company, Steve Davis. They support our action learning. So that's one thing. And the other is we are going to have a joint executive education program. James Scott is leading, will be happening. So those small steps. After those, if we see this promising, we are going to do the second stage, will be more big steps.
Okay, excellent. And just so I have it right. So for many years, we've had jointly listed courses, right, from the get-go with Sloan. But this new one is a jointly developed course, right? And that may be the shape of things to come?
Yes, and another thing is we are going to develop another second joint class. Maybe we will call it AI and real estate. Data science, AI and real estate. We are trying to do this also as strong from the initial, like instructors.
CG, I just want to say I applaud your efforts to, for tighter integration. So I think kudos to you for what you're doing in that. So well done.
Other thoughts?
I mean, I'll just add a little bit thing to that, which is that if you look at the finance part of the curriculum, which we've all agreed is a very central part of it there from the get-go, as the field of finance and investments has evolved in the 40 years, and as business schools and academic finance has evolved in those 40 years, it becomes more and more difficult for us to really hire top-notch, world-class financial economist person without that person actually, being substantially involved in a business school. It doesn't have to be solely, but they probably at least need to, maybe have a joint appointment or something like that. Yeah,
it's always been the case.
Okay. Albert.
There's cost and benefits. I started my career at Wharton. It's also very good real estate program up there. And there's a different, as you absolutely rightly say, the culture is very different in a business school, for the good and for the bad. For the bad, you're right that we're losing a little bit sight of the product and the design and the locality, specificity of the product. On the good side, the management, and it's very professional in business schools, and you don't feel it's hard to push for things to be done, and sort of the engagement with industry is actually looked for. So there's pros and benefits, but at the end of the day, I think it doesn't really matter what we want or what we wish or what the deans at the end of the day make decisions. I think that the beauty of a program like ours is you guys. All of us here, we're just catalysts. The way I see the role of a professor at MIT is just being a catalyst. So you guys come from the industry. We learn from you. I learn from executive education. I learn from my students. I learn from the industry visitors. I learn from the center members. And then I pass it to you guys. And then I learn more from, as you graduate, many of you, I see so many friendly faces of my students. Then I learn more and I pass it on. And that's what really matters, whether it's in the business school, in the School of Architecture, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that ability of the center to keep on our role as a catalyst for the industry into education and back to industry.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Albert. We have an enormous amount of real estate knowledge, and AI is advancing at a very, very fast pace. Sloan has obviously a fantastic business school, a lot of technical knowledge there. Do you think AI in real estate, trying to curate a course, is something we might try to undertake and maybe even try to lead the country in?
I think so. I have strong thoughts about this one.
Good.
Definitely, we can and should certainly think about an AI class. But if you think I'm old enough to remember Windows 95. Who does remember Windows 95? That really changed the way in which we operate and the way in which we sort of work with computers. Before that, computers were clunky, difficult to use. Windows 95 allowed so much change, and the changes already happened. So think about all these architectural projects by Gary and, like Heid, and they couldn't be done without a computer. Our performance today, they couldn't be done without a computer. We just check for listings of commercial real estate in LoopNet done by the internet. So the reality is that AI is just one other step. It's already been the case that for the last 40 years, technology is completely sort of like going together with the process of real estate. So AI is just another tool. What I believe is that the tools are going to be developed by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs as we have Argus and we have LoopNet and so on and so forth. We're going to have people, and maybe some of our students, who are going to come up with these amazing products based on AI. What I think we need to do, rather than teach students machine learning, and this might not be what they really need to be doing, I think there's a bit of hype about everyone needs to learn machine learning. Maybe not. Maybe you need to be a good consumer and to be ready to use those products that very smart people are going to put together for us, like CAD or BIM models that we now take for granted.
Yeah, I would add to that just a little bit, in the sense that one thing I would be fearful is that people would look at AI as simply as a black box and sort of think that, I think you need to peer into that box a little bit to understand how it works, why it works, how we can so I think we need to jump a little deeper into it. And again, maybe we achieve that through a course. But the other point I'd like to make is that, AI shouldn't be concentrated just in one course. I mean, I think there was this discussion of construction management, I think earlier today, and the use of AI in construction management. So we should look for where we can inject AI into all of these courses, right? Because it shouldn't just be found in just one course. It should be everywhere. So it's consistent with Windows 95, right? Once Windows 95 came out, well, whether I did marketing or whether I did construction management or finance, I used Windows 95. So it should be omnipresent.
I just want to add, we are not saying that we only try to integrate with Sloan School, but also the engineering school, and here, the media lab, because here also has a lot of data scientists, very AI experts. And we are trying to not talk about 5 years from now or 2, 3, 4 years, who knows, but we will have a new space. The new space, we really want to be at the center of the campus and really have the integration with the media lab, the engineering school, and also with a proximity to Sloan School and our own school.
Okay, excellent. AI needs lots of data, right?
Yes. And I did plea for data earlier.
I know you did. I know you did.
And I'm still pleading for data.
All right. But, and we've got, look at all these faces out here. Look at all the companies. And all those companies have lots of data, right? Is there a way that maybe through AI or some other initiative, we can come up with ideas to engage and integrate our faculty and our alums and their companies?
I think that would be great. I mean, I think we should, set up a laboratory or something that does AI and real estate. Maybe that would require, some sort of summit between the faculty and the alumni, next fall semester, because, AI is such a fast-moving field. It's ill-defined, what is AI, what isn't AI, what's state of the art. I mean, if this is MIT, we should be at the cutting edge, and we need to know where that is. So any feedback from the alum, reach out to me, reach out to Sichi, Albert, Bill, tell us what's important. And, I'm very happy to sort of, look into this and lead those efforts, I think. And again, I think the alums are really pivotal in all of this. Tell us what needs to be done. Because it's such a fast moving, impactful sort of, phenomenon that's going on. And we need to know what's going on out in the real world. Otherwise, it's not going to be very useful.
All right. I couldn't agree with that more. There's great potential. The alums in industry can absolutely help faculty better understand what's going on in the real world, and faculty can help them with analytic tools to better understand what's going on in their businesses.
For sure, 100%.
Sichi, go ahead, then we'll wrap up.
Okay, I will try. First, international students. I think that's a very important thing. So myself, Albert, we were international students. So now also we are trying to expand the CRE's footprint and impact, not just in the United States, not just around Boston, DC, and New York, this area. We need to be more international, because in the past several years, from the statistics, 40 to 50% of our students, they are international students in our classroom. So if 40 to 50% of students, they are international, so we also need to keep this relationship and engage them after their graduation. We cannot just everything is happening here in Boston. So that's why I will go to Tokyo again for Japanese alumni, and we also have a big base in Hong Kong and the mainland China, and we are doing this. And again, not just the East Coast, but also West Coast. That's why Walter and James, they are going to the Bay Area in the fall. So the international we will definitely address and greatly. And so for the first question, thank you again. Thank you so much. Very grateful for this support. And regarding the structure thing, I don't think that's something we can answer. So I just want to use example like the Media Lab. Here, where we are, they also had the similar structure before, but they also changed. Now, they also changed from the previous structure to the current structure. They have the faculty director and the executive director, I think. But in the middle now, they only have faculty. So, but basically the thing is the industry part, how we call it and how we structure that, that's basically not we can decide. That's something that, but anyway, the industry engagement is very important, no matter we call it the chairman or executive director, or now James' title is the director of the professional and industry relations, industry programs. No matter how we call it, that we need to stress and strengthen the alumni and industry engagement and makes it stronger.
Okay, excellent. Unless there are any final comments? You're smiling at me, Larry?
Just one thought.
Quick thought on advisory committee. All right.
I think we will first establish a working group to start this.
Okay. Larry.
So just one last thought to sort of, Universities are complicated organizations, but at some level, it's important to focus on the most important things. And this is true at any level. In the end, only a couple things matter in a university, but I would say in a school, in a department, in a program. And what are they? How do we attract, retain, nurture, and support the very best students working with the very best faculty under conditions which enable them to do their very best work? And in some ways, every decision that we ought to be making, whether or not you're a donor, whether or not you're a faculty member, somebody who's responsible for the administration, in the end, we all should be focusing, how do we attract, retain, nurture, and support the very best students working with the very best faculty in an environment where they can do their very best work. At different times, they're going to focus on different things. 40 years ago, we would have never thought about AI. Now we have to think about AI. So things are going to change. We got to take the long view, but always the secret sauce is getting the very best students working with the very best people, because students are going to become alumni, and the alumni are going to go out and they're going to innovate and they're going to do great things and they're going to change the world. And that's, in the end, I think we all want them to do.
I agree. Let me end with just saying how grateful I am to everyone up on the stage for taking the time to come here and share your very honest thoughts, and how grateful I am for all of you to be here.
Thank you very much. Whoa. 5 minutes, guys. I'm sorry, we've kept you here long enough. You got to wait till the very end. I'm just going to invite Walt Torres, the director of the MSRED program, to honor and present this year's Spaulding Award winner. This is an annual recognition of outstanding professional achievement and contribution to the real estate industry. So over to you, Walt.
All right. Were you going to put up the nominees? All right, they're coming up. Well, anyway, yes. So James announced, obviously the Spaulding Award honors outstanding professional achievement by an alumni whose work in the real estate industry has enriched the profession and whose community involvement has been marked by distinguished service or leadership. And I think what's important to emphasize here is that this is an award voted on by you, the peers. All right. So again, I put down, someone mentioned in real estate, baseball analogies are very important. It's like being named the MVP of the All-Star game. All right. So that's what we're dealing with here today. So can we get the names of I was looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Yeah. So here we have the list of all the nominees. And I should point out that this year, the ACRE and the leadership of the CRE, we've expanded, if you will, the eligibility requirements for the Spaulding Award. So now I think if you've taken classes at the CRE, for example, an ABD, all but dissertation, we think you may be a deserving candidate for the Spaulding Award. So, okay, I have this sealed envelope here. I think we had a local accounting firm did all counted everything, and I think I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards here. I've never done this before, so you have to. And at this rate, this may be the only time I do it. Anyway, we have Jim Heid. Is he here? I don't believe, no, he's not here. All right. Whoa, I just noticed that there's a second winner. Hold on. Yeah, so I think this is a year in which we have two winners. And I do know that the other winner is here, and it's Todd McGrath. Actually, there is. Congratulations. Yeah. Oh, great. Go ahead, say a few words, Todd.
So the only way I could even be up there is because you changed the rules.
I didn't want to say that because I
That's
thought
it.
it would give him a clue, but
I love you all. You're all very kind. Thank you very much.
all right. So I just have one last comment here. You know, a lot of people were involved in making this all happen. It was a great success. And I just wanted to give one last shout out to the person who really spearheaded this effort. That's James Scott. So James, thank you. Now you can relax. Thank you, everyone.